So, picture this. A quiet day out on my ranch. Just me enjoying some peace away from the usual chaos. But then, out of nowhere, this whole HOA situation blows up, and things get way more intense than I ever expected. You know how it is, those neighborhood watch types, the ones who act like they own every inch of land around here. Yeah, well, one of those HOA Karens decided to cross a serious line by trespassing on my property. Not just a quick walkthrough. Either they drove right in like they had some kind of authority now. I'm a pretty patient person, but when someone just barges onto your land without asking, it sets off all kinds of alarms. It wasn't just about them being there. It felt like a challenge. So, I had to think fast. What could I do to keep my property safe and send a clear message without causing a huge scene? That's when the idea hit me, something simple but effective. I grabbed some hay bales, stacked them up, and used the gate in a way they didn't expect. Let's just say their car got stuck in a pretty unusual spot. And they weren't going anywhere for a while. But here's the thing. Locking their car in wasn't just about inconvenience. It was about standing up for what's mine and making sure nobody thinks they can just walk or drive over me. There's a lot more to this story, though. The aftermath? It's not quite over yet. The tension is still thick, and the HOA isn't exactly thrilled about how I handled things. What happened next? How did they react when they realized their ride was trapped? You're going to want to stick around for that part, because it's not what you'd expect. This isn't just a simple ranch story, it's about boundaries, respect, and a whole lot of unexpected drama. Before all this went down, my ranch was just my own little world, a place where I could breathe, work hard, and unwind without worrying about anyone else's rules. But living close to an HOA means you're never really free from their eyes. They're always watching, always ready to call you out for the smallest thing. I dealt with their complaints before, things like fences being a bit too tall or a truck parked where it shouldn't be, but this was a whole new level. The HOA in my area has a reputation for being super strict and a bit over the top. They're the type who think they can control everything, from how you paint your house to where you park your car. I'd heard stories about others getting into heated fights over property lines and ridiculous rules. So when I saw that their representative, as I call her, HOA Karen, actually drove right onto my land without any permission, I knew things were about to get serious. What made it worse was how confident she seemed, like she had every right to be there. She wasn't just checking on something small or accidentally driving through. No, this was deliberate, like she wanted to send a message. And honestly, it felt like a power move, trying to show me who's boss. But she didn't realize that I wasn't about to back down quietly. I started thinking about how I could respond without escalating into some big legal mess or a neighborhood war. I needed something that said, "This is my land, and you're not welcome to just roll in whenever you please." That's when the hay bale idea came to me. It was practical and, well, a little bit poetic, using the land itself to set a boundary. The funny thing is, once I locked that car in, everything shifted. There were phone calls, some angry texts, and a whole lot of tension that's still hanging over the ranch. The HOA isn't backing down, and honestly, neither am I. But what happens next? That's the real question. What made this whole situation even more complicated was the fact that the HOA wasn't just some faceless organization. It was run by people I actually knew, or at least thought I knew. Seeing one of their members show up on my ranch like that felt personal, like a betrayal. I started hearing whispers from neighbors, some siding with the HOA, others quietly cheering me on. Suddenly, the community felt divided. What was supposed to be a peaceful rural life turned into this drama-filled standoff. On one side, you've got the HOA's point of view. Rules are rules, and they believe they're protecting property, values, and the neighborhood's look. But on the other side, there's my right to privacy and ownership. It's a clash between control and freedom, authority and respect. The lines got blurred quickly, especially when the HOA began talking about fines and possible legal action. It wasn't just about hay bales or a trapped car anymore. It was about who holds the power. Then there was the subplot of the community meetings. I showed up to defend my side, but the room was thick with tension. Some neighbors gave me wary looks, while others quietly expressed their frustration with the HOA's heavy-handed tactics. It felt like a battle on two fronts, not just against the HOA board, but also trying to keep the peace with people I'd been living next to for years. Meanwhile, HOA Karen kept pushing back harder than I expected. Her calls were frequent, her tone sharp, and I started wondering if she was trying to provoke me into making a mistake. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was a psychological game. Every time I thought things might cool down, there was another move, another message, another sign she wasn't backing off. The ranch that once felt like a refuge suddenly became a battleground, and I had to figure out how far I was willing to go to protect my land, my sanity. But with all this at stake, what would be the next move from either side? The tension was only growing, and the story was far from over. As days passed, the tension on the ranch grew thicker. The trapped car became a constant reminder of the standoff between me and the HOA, especially HOA Karen. She wasn't just angry, she seemed determined to make this personal. Every time I stepped outside, I half expected her to be waiting at the gate, or worse, to find some new way to push boundaries. The phone calls didn't stop. Messages piled up, some polite, but most dripping with frustration and threats about legal action and fines that could stack up fast. But honestly, it felt like more than just a property dispute. It was about pride, control, and standing my ground. I could sense the whole neighborhood was watching, waiting to see who would blink first. Community meetings turned into battlegrounds, with voices raised and sides taken. The people I'd called neighbors now looked at me differently, some with support, others with suspicion. The HOA seemed to be rallying their forces, tightening their grip with more rules and inspections. While I tried to hold on to what little piece was left on the ranch, then came the moments that really made me question how far this would go. I caught glimpses of HOA Karen talking with other board members in hushed tones, their eyes locked on my property. At one point, a group showed up near the gate, pretending to survey something, but it was clear they were testing me, looking for weaknesses or excuses. Inside me, the calm that once defined my ranch life was replaced with this restless energy. Every sound, car engines in the distance, footsteps near the fence, felt like a countdown to something bigger. I knew the situation was reaching a boiling point, and whatever happened next could change everything. The question was, who would make the first real move, and what would the consequences be? The ranch felt less like home and more like a stage for a showdown no one wanted to back down from. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any more intense, something unexpected happened that flipped everything on its head. Late one evening, as I was checking the gate and the hay bales that still blocked the car, I noticed tire tracks leading away from the ranch tracks that didn't belong to anyone I knew. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor, but the pattern was too deliberate, too careful. Like someone was scouting the place or planning something. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my front door. It wasn't from the HOA or any official source. The message was vague but chilling. "You're stirring up trouble. Be careful where you step." That wasn't all. Someone had tampered with the gate, enough to make it clear they had been there overnight. No damage, but enough to send a message. Suddenly, this wasn't just about a locked car or HOA disputes anymore. There was something else at play, something more dangerous. I started wondering if this was an escalation by someone within the HOA, or maybe a third party using the conflict to their advantage. Either way, it raised the stakes. The ranch, my sanctuary, was now under some kind of threat I hadn't anticipated. I knew I had to be more careful, but that only made the tension rise even more. Every sound at night felt like a warning, every shadow suspicious. Meanwhile, HOA Karen doubled down on her efforts, acting like nothing had changed, but I could tell she felt the pressure too, like she was trying to maintain control, while something bigger was slipping through her fingers. The community was buzzing with rumors, neighbors exchanging worried glances, unsure who to trust. With the locked car, the mysterious threats, and the gate tampering, the conflict wasn't just a simple property dispute anymore. It was turning into something I never saw coming, and the climax was fast approaching. The question now was, how far would this go before everything came crashing down? The tension that had been building finally exploded one early morning when I spotted headlights flickering near the gate. It was HOA Karen, but she wasn't alone. Behind her rolled a tow truck, ready to haul away the car I'd locked in with hay bales. I could feel my heart pounding, not just from the confrontation, but from knowing this was the moment everything would come to a head. I stepped outside, determined to face them head-on. "You're not taking that car today," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. Karen smirked, clearly expecting me to back down. But this wasn't just about a vehicle anymore. It was about respect, boundaries, and standing my ground. As the tow truck driver prepared to hook the car, a loud rumbling echoed from behind me. Suddenly, neighbors started appearing, some carrying their own hay bales, others just standing firm in support. What I thought was an isolated fight had turned into a community stand. People were tired of the HOA's heavy-handed tactics and wanted to show they had my back. Karen's confident expression faltered. The HOA board's control was slipping, and this showdown wasn't going their way. Just then, a surprising voice cut through the chaos. Was the HOA president himself, arriving unexpectedly and calling for calm. But instead of siding with Karen, he announced he had reviewed the property lines and found the HOA had overstepped. Admitting the trespassing wasn't justified. The room fell silent. Karen's plans unraveled in front of everyone. What felt like a battle between neighbors turned into a revelation that exposed the HOA's overreach. Just when I thought it was over, the president dropped one final bombshell. The HOA was under investigation for mismanagement, sparked by anonymous complaints that had just surfaced. With that, the story took an unexpected turn, shifting the focus from one locked car to a much bigger fight about accountability and fairness. The ranch was no longer just my refuge, had become a symbol of standing up against control and injustice. And while this chapter closed, the next one was just beginning. After the HOA president's announcement, the atmosphere shifted completely. It was like the weight that had been pressing down on the ranch and all of us started to lift. The board's investigation meant that the days of overreach and unnecessary conflict might finally be coming to an end. People who had been quiet before began to speak up, sharing their own frustrations about the HOA's rules and actions. It felt like a fresh start was possible. As for the car, I decided to unlock it and move the hay bales myself. I wanted to show that this wasn't about creating enemies, but about protecting what's mine and standing up for what's right. The message was clear. Respect goes both ways. The locked car wasn't just a prank or a petty retaliation. It was a boundary, and sometimes boundaries need to be firm to be understood. Neighbors who had stood by me through all this became more than just faces in the crowd. They became allies. The ranch, once a quiet retreat, turned into a gathering place where conversations about fairness and community respect started to happen. I realized this whole ordeal wasn't just about one trespass or a locked vehicle. It was about making sure everyone knows their limits and respects the rights of others, especially when it comes to private land. Looking back, it was a tough ride, no doubt. But sometimes, standing your ground is the only way to protect what matters most. The HOA conflict tested patience and nerves, but it also showed the power of community when people choose to come together for what's right. So, if you're dealing with your own land disputes or feeling like your boundaries are being crossed, remember this story. Sometimes you have to be firm, creative, and stand up not just for yourself, but for everyone who believes in respect and fairness. Because in the end, that's what makes a place feel like home.